Thank you, Sandy. Um, it was interesting. I mentioned that our speech last week talked about the bouquet of humanity, and bouquet was one of the words in the second poem. And as you said that, it made me think of another poet, Leonard Cohen, singer. Um, and that song, that word features in a song, and I'm going to try to get the lyrics right because I think it's really apropos and it's a perfect entree to my next section here. The last verse of his song "Democracy is Coming to the USA." He says, "I'm temperamental, if you know what I mean. I love the country, but I can't stand the scene. And I'm neither left nor right. I'm just staying home tonight, getting lost in this useless little screen. But I'm stubborn as those garbage bags that time cannot decay. I'm junk, but I'm still holding up this little wild bouquet. Democracy is coming to the USA." So thank you for sharing that. And thank you to Leonard, who wrote a lot of wonderful poems, which became wonderful songs. So an announcement I probably don't need to make. Early voting in the 2024 federal and state elections begins tomorrow, October 21. If you live in Southbury, you vote in the Southbury Town Hall. And I know somebody who traveled here from Iceland so that she can vote in person instead of crossing her fingers and hoping that absentee will work. I will vote soon. I never discuss here who I vote for, nor do I here endorse any candidate, nor do I here suggest to anyone whom I think they should vote for. But starting with this year's 4th of July rally, I've been exploring the type of government envisioned by our founders, not with any phony predictions of how they would have addressed cybersecurity or whether they would regret the cumbersome electoral college. No, we have discussed the actual principles articulated by those who took it upon themselves to describe to the world what the American governing experiment was all about. They declared independence because the operative government at the time did not maximize the two goals of a well-run government to affect the safety and happiness of the governed. Safety was required of any state, but to elevate the happiness of the governed people rather than the happiness of the governing people, well, that was new and enlightened and unique. And that's why this series has been entitled Happiness, our founding governing principle. The vision statement of this new nation was thus described in the Declaration of Independence. And the nuts and bolts of how the government would actually carry out its primary task of affecting safety and happiness was eventually outlined in the Constitution. But between the vision and the rules was America's founding mission statement, the Preamble to the United States Constitution. Drafted in Philadelphia during 6 weeks in 1787, the Preamble communicates the purpose of the government as intended by the framers. The Preamble is an introduction to the original laws of the country, but its words are not in of themselves law. Rather, the 52 words of the Preamble are America's mission statement. This is what the country is about. This is how we're going to do it. This is the kind of government that will make America special. If you ever want to know why America is exceptional, this is where you start. If you're ever concerned that the American experiment is threatened, if you're ever worried about things being un-American, if you're ever debating an opponent about what should be in our land, go back to the mission statement. So what is this mission statement? You all probably have memorized it. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. If you're like me, the song is going through your head as you go through the words. So that's familiar, but let's take our time, as we've done with other things that we thought were familiar, like the Declaration. Because this is the most important framing of our government that you are supposed to vote for. So who arranges this government? Who gets to choose how it works? We the people. We have the rights, but with rights come responsibilities. So we the people have the power, but we must exercise it the right way. What's the right way? Well, we fight that out in every election. We have someone here today who's got to elect a sign for candidates. According to those who started this country, the right way to exercise people power is the way described in this mission statement. What is the goal according to this mission statement? In order to form a more perfect union. A more perfect union is one which strives towards those goals of safety and happiness that are enunciated in the Declaration. Not 100% safety or 100% happiness. Not in order to form a perfect union, but a more perfect union. Make it better. It's the same spirit as the vision statement of Justice Southbury. Our vision is a more fair and kind community for all. It's a less lofty version than a more perfect union, but the spirit is the same. We, the people, have the right, the privilege to form a more perfect union. But we, the people, also have the responsibility, the mandate to form a more perfect union. To whom do we have this responsibility? Do we just exercise it for ourselves? Just for our family, our loved ones? No. The preamble ends with the need to enlarge the scope of our efforts. We, the people, aren't just directed to form a more perfect union for those alive now, but for future generations as well, to ourselves and our posterity. We must act in such a way that we are not only maximizing our present, narrow self-interests, but to keep in mind the needs and rights of our posterity. The obligation to our prosperity reminds me of three things as I was going over this. First of all, it reminds me of a divorce that I handled a few years ago, where my client's family, his many, many, many cousins, had land in the family going back to the colonial land in New England, back to the 1700s. You can imagine the original mother and father and how it all had spread out. So by the time you get to my client's generation, there were dozens of cousins who held rights to this historic land. Each generation agreed to simply pass it on to the next. In the divorce, it was a big issue because the opposing spouse said, well, your land is worth a lot of dollars, and I should get half. Fortunately, that family history led the land to be excluded from the asset split, and yet another generation passed it on to their posterity. Also reminds me of a Facebook post this past week criticizing potential upgrades to I-84 between here and Danbury. Yeah, this might help a few years from now and then forever to have more travel lanes, but my own driving will be negatively affected for a couple of years. In other words, let the people who come after me bear the brunt. But imagine the pain in the butt that Eisenhower's interstate highway construction caused our parents' generation, and then thank them for enduring it for posterity. This also reminds me of the efforts to confront climate change. In every objection to doing something about it, you can either hear the faint whispers or the open shouts of NIMBY. Not NIMBY, not in my backyard, but NIMBY, not in my generation. I'm not going to endure anything for the benefit of those guys who have to worry about climate change. If you are focused on your posterity, you govern the way and you elect people the way the founders wanted you to focus, on ourselves and our posterity. Those who started this country laid down the challenge to all generations of Americans. You, the people, have the awesome task of electing the government that will most affect the safety and happiness of yourselves, of your neighbors, of your grandchildren, and of your grandchildren's neighbors. If you do so thoughtfully, you will continue our collective work toward the more perfect union that we all deserve, all of us. I will conclude this analysis of our founding principles of happiness next time I speak, on the Sunday before the election, when we'll examine the 5 middle clauses of the preamble, those which define the specific goals of a government focused on the safety and happiness of the people. And again, I will not tell anybody, I will not presume to tell anyone who they should vote for. But if you want to vote for the country that this is, you'll go back to the preamble and you'll go back to the Declaration and you'll say, what kind of country are we supposed to have? And I would challenge everybody to dig deep and do that type of analysis. So thank you.